Hello, everyone. We are back and we have our final panel. So if everybody could switch on their cameras and their microphones, fantastic. I'm going to turn it over to Sandra.
Yes, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you here. All of you around the world, thank you for staying with us and to have an interest in learning more about sustainable fashion. So as a citizen, we don't really think every single day about legislations or what policymaking are brewing somewhere in the state of California. And for that, I have the experts here with us. So welcome. And I'm going to introduce each of you. We are going to start with Dr. Joanne Brash, and she is a project manager for the California Product Stewardship Council. And next is Catherine Wilkins, and she is a scientist. Welcome. She's a scientist at the Cal Recycle. That's right, Cal Recycle from the state of California as well. And next we have our friend, and we support you very much throughout the years, Assembly Member David Chu. And he represents the 17th District in San Francisco at the Assembly, at the California Assembly legislators. So all of you, welcome. I would like to who would like to start and say a little bit about yourselves?
Well, I can start since you introduced me first. So again, my name is Joanne Brash. I do work for a nonprofit, the California Product Stewardship Council. I also lecture at UC Davis in the Department of Textiles. My research is in supply chain sustainability and zero waste strategies for large industrial systems. My work at CPSC has gotten me involved in policy and legislation. And again, that's what brought me here today. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Sandra, for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Catherine? There you are. Let's see. Oh, no. Okay, so this is, well, Okay, so we have problems, technical problems with Catherine. She'll be back. And let me tell you that as much as we are very well advanced in technology, things are not 100% perfect. And that is okay. It makes us human, right? We're dealing with what is in front of us, and we are here to connect with you. So let's see. Catherine, do you have sound? No. Let's move on to Assembly Member David Chu. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm David Chu, and I'm honored to represent San Francisco in the California State Legislature. And I think by virtue of the fact that I'm a politician, I'm clearly the least fashionable person involved in this conference anywhere. I am so sad we're not all meeting in person. Last year, I had the chance to welcome so many folks from around the world, and we had all hoped to do so again this year. And hopefully we'll be able to sometime soon in the future, but I hope everyone is healthy and safe and well. I think my touch point to these issues over the years, I've been in elected office for about a dozen years. I have worked closely with both environmentalists and folks from the fashion industry about this idea that if we're going to save our planet, we have to start with every industry we're in, and certainly the fashion industry, which has had a history of being among our most significant polluting industries, adding to greenhouse gases, is really at the heart of that. So really appreciate what everyone's doing and look forward to the conversation this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, and to Joanne as well. Let's try Catherine. Maybe without the
Sandra, we're gonna try to bring take Catherine out and bring her back in. So
Perfect.
We're gonna go ahead and attempt that and get the audio cleared up. So we'll see if that works. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. So we'll talk to you shortly. Absolutely. So thank you so much again. And if you would like to write your questions, as we say here, we are going to pose the questions, not the questions, but the questions for our panelists, of course. And then you can write your questions on the chat, and then Athena will gather them at the end, and so we can just move forward with these conversations that we're going to have. Okay, very good. Let me tell you that it's just something that worries me a lot, and it is the chemicals that we are exposed on a day-to-day, and especially coming to when we talk about textiles, the textile industry, everything that we touch, that we wear, everything has an amount of chemicals that is alarming. And I wonder, so throughout all of this, one of my main passions and commitment has been to inform people of what is it that we need to look out for. What is it that, to really inform them, in this case, inform them about what you do on a day-to-day basis, and for us to see how can we, at the end, really support your initiatives or the initiatives that other groups are coming forward with, and then coming together as one community. Because if we start just leaving the work or the hard work to someone else, it's just separating the community, which is a global community, for the future that matters to all of us, the future of the planet. So let's get started, and we are going to wait for whenever Catherine comes back. We'll give her a moment. So let's start with, how could government policy play a role in creating and enforcing the law by banning harmful chemicals when manufacturing products for people? And Mr. Chu, can we start with you on this one?
Sure. This is obviously a central question to the whole conversation. And I would say theoretically, government should be playing a significant role in enforcing the law and banning harmful chemicals. But the reality that we all know is oftentimes the politicians don't do what is right. And I think it's fair to say, with all due respect to anyone who may represent the chemical industry has been incredibly successful at blocking outright bans or other or attempts by many of us who are progressive and environmental lawmakers to phase these products out. But there have been some successes, and I'll just mention one. So about 10 years ago, I was approached by literally hundreds of advocates for the nail salon industry. And in particular, the fact that we have workers who are exposed every single day, workers and customers who are exposed to what is known as the so-called toxic trio. So there are 3 chemicals that are incredibly harmful that we know cause cancer, allergies, respiratory difficulties, neurological difficulties, reproductive harm, dibutyl phthalate, toluene, and then formaldehyde for all of you who dissected frogs in high school biology. When you walk into a typical nail salon, you smell chemicals that are just not good for you. Yet, despite best efforts, workers have not been able to push the industry to substitute non-toxic, healthy chemicals that we know can actually be just as stylish, just as long-lasting, but for whatever reason, the chemical industry hasn't even moved there. And I should mention, they're also about as inexpensive. So advocates came to me about a decade ago when I was the president of the city council in San Francisco and asked me, rather than trying to ban these chemicals, can we create a positive incentive for nail salons that use good chemicals? And what we ended up doing was we wrote the first local law in the country, which then became a state standard in California, is now becoming a national conversation in the country, that essentially incensed healthy nail salons. We set standards and said, if you don't use these chemicals and you treat your workers well, and if you have certain health conditions in your workplace, we will give you a good housekeeping seal of approval on your nail salon, so that consumers know, go to this nail salon because they're doing a better job than others. So rather than trying to ban something, we're using a carrot approach as opposed to a stick approach. So that's worked. But that being said, I can tell you there are dozens of fights that we have just in our legislature every year trying to ban all the sorts of bad products we're talking about, and oftentimes we lose those. And so building this movement, and in particular having your industry, a sustainable fashion industry, really driving change from the industry standpoint is so incredibly important for all of us.
Yeah, really great. We use nail salons, and really, when we step in, we really don't know that just by smelling something, the molecules of that smell is affecting your body, your whatever it is that it's around you. You just breathing everything. So thank you for that initiative. Really great. Let's go to Catherine. Let's see, Catherine, are you with us?
Am I? Can you hear me now?
Yay!
Yay!
Yes.
Sorry about that, everyone.
All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then please answer the question on the screen.
Sure. So to catch up, sorry. Hi, I'm Kate Wilkins. I work at CalRecycle. So that's the state of California department that kind of does some oversight and regulations on solid waste and recycling industries. I'm pretty interested in international export markets of recyclable goods, but I've also in the last year or two dabbled in our textiles working group, which is a group of some pretty interested folks who recognize that textiles is a large component of the California waste stream, and are kind of starting to have public events and stakeholder input to see what the possibilities are, and maybe what are gaps and the lacks at CalRecycle in addressing this issue. So it's really interesting. And this question, and I like what the assembly member said, and I probably can't be as detailed in an answer about this. What I initially thought of, that I've seen a lot of and heard a lot of talk about while working at the state, is the idea of better labeling and transparency as also a way where it's not a ban perhaps, but really creating more transparency where it's very easy for people to find out what is in either garments or cosmetics, and also where they can trace that back, is really more that carrot model of how to incentivize not using harmful chemicals, and say ethical manufacturing practices. So that's kind of what I originally thought of for this question, and something that we've heard a lot of from industry partners.
Thank you, Catherine. All right, Joanne, how about you?
Yeah, thanks. So at the California Product Stewardship Council, we have a saying, no ban without a plan. And there are discussions of bans happening, adding to Assemblymember Chu's list. The perfluoroalkyls, which are often used for waterproofing, are one of those chemicals that have been identified by the Department of Toxic Substance Control as a harmful chemical. So we're in the midst of regulatory process to figure out what to do with the products that have these particular class of chemicals. But at CPSC, we say no ban without a plan because you still have the legacy products. Your tub is overflowing, you still want to turn off the tap, but eventually you have to start mopping up the floor. And we saw this happen with toxic products like the thermostats, the mercury thermostats. They banned this product from entering our market, but what we saw was our waste managers and our local governments were still handling these products as they were being removed, which meant we still have the exposures, we still have the cost, we still have the environmental risks. So we tend to take a more holistic approach when we address products of concern. And our mission at CPSC is to engage the producers in our end-of-life issues. So driving that circular economy means just closing that loop of communication with producers and waste managers.
That's great. So I see that the three of you are just very well connected in a way that working for the same purposes. And thank you for the work that you do on a daily basis. Let's go to the next question. And what are the next steps or strategies, interventions to transform the current linear economy into a circular economy? Catherine, do you want to start?
Sure. Before I deflect to the other speakers. Next steps. I mean, this is a huge question, and I mean, super interesting. And again, I'm just going to kind of echo some of we had a great workshop about textiles at Cal Recycle in December, where I think we learned a lot. And what some of the participants who were producers, fashion designers, city trash haulers, things like that, brought them together, start having a conversation kind of about this and asked a question. And, we saw 4 main categories come up. Incentivizing repair and reuse. Obviously, it's not a circular economy if something's going to the landfill. You got to keep that material in use. So that was huge and could be a really kind of fun program to do, trying to incentivize reuse and repair. Collection. We obviously, things that are maybe not able to be reused or repaired, some way to collect them to bring them back into the material stream in another way. At least for textiles, we don't have a very robust at all collection system for different kinds of clothes, besides what sometimes you see like drop off back at stores. But no like curbside, like on a large scale, like some materials. Other things were education. I think that has a huge step to play. And some people are, what does a circular economy mean? And what do you mean? How does that relate to what I'm doing with my old clothes or cosmetics, which is probably harder. So a lot of opportunity for education. And then the last one, obviously, policy, which we're kind of talking about. And I'm going to literally take what Dr. Brash had said at this workshop in December, and I really liked it. And it's like, how do we not only make, this economy and this material use not extractive and a bad thing, but make the whole process better? Like, how does it make the system better? And trying to ask ourselves and framing in this question when you're producing something and just kind of changing the frame around it, however we could do that, it's kind of an important start to just really thinking about it bigger. And really probably from a state perspective, because there's only maybe so much you can do with policy, or like in my department specifically, we don't make the laws. We put them into, we like oversee them once they're made. Public-private partnerships could be really, really important, because all the research and development and really cool innovation going on is amazing. And that's something that ideally the public sector could support. And then we could really kind of move the needle on this question and go into a circular economy. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so let's hear from Mr. Chu.
So I have 3 thoughts to answer this question. The first is to really push the idea of producer responsibility, or what's known sort of the extended producer responsibility, EPR. And that is the idea that if you are making a product, you should bear the costs of the environmental impact of that product. So if you're making a computer and your computer gets discarded after 5 years, or a cell phone, that cost to the planet forever should somehow be incorporated in the product. And the same should apply to fashion, right? So we all know that in recent years, the big trend is fast fashion, low cost products, low price products. People wear them for a season and they get tossed. That we need to think as an economy, but working with governments, how do we disincent that? And how do we really require the manufacturers, the producers of those products, to bake into the product? So that is one thought. This is a conversation that's been a difficult one, but I think one that's gaining traction. The second thing I think we have to think about is, how do we think about just different corporate models to really take this into? And in the video we just watched, there's a reference to B corporations, or benefit corporations. The idea that companies that are only focused on the sole bottom line of profit are not the long-term model that is going to create a sustainable. Benefit corporations are companies that have what are known as double or triple bottom lines, where we measure the value of the company based on whether it's thinking about things beyond the money it's making today. In San Francisco, years ago, I legislated the first set of contracting benefits for benefit corporations of the state of California. We've been looking at different ways to use tax incentives and others to support one type of corporate structure over another. This conversation is now happening in Washington, D.C., hopefully happening around the world, but that's something I think we have to think about as well. The third thing I would just propose, really pose to everyone watching this, is around consumer power and industry power. And I will say to those of you who are industry leaders, you have an amazing opportunity if you band together to be the conscience of your community and your industry and really drive changes from within. And oftentimes, politicians and policymakers, we see what's happening and we say, bad industry, why do you keep polluting? And it's a classic fight between, say, government and polluting industries. The best way to move change is if you can point to industry players who are driving environmental change from within. And we say, those are the good guys within your industry. We want to support you with tax policies, with environmental policies, with consumer policies, and give you a leg up in the competition, in the competitive marketplace over your opponents in the marketplace who are polluting. That's how you create a dynamic that's going to work. And if you create consumers willing to buy your products, that's how we win. So I think it's a variety of things. Look forward to the continued discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's move to the next question as our time is running a little bit short. How could government policy play a role in reducing textile waste? And how about lifting tax penalties and give tax incentive to those producing chemical-free products? Who would like to start?
I guess I could go since I didn't get a chance at the last one, but all questions are pretty similar. And Assemblymember Chu is really singing our song, which is the mission of CPSC since 2007, which is producer responsibility. So when we look at all the various problems, whether it's waste, chemicals, microfibers, getting the producers involved at that end of life and kind of closing the loop is really the best type of intervention, is getting all the stakeholders involved. And I also echo what my panelists were saying, that it's easier and better to incentivize than it is to penalize. So there are different ways that we can, promote the B corporations and incentivize products that are using recycled content, chemical-free, through local, state, and federal policies. We see the conversation happening at all three levels, but I must give a lot of props to California, specifically to San Francisco, really just pushing the bar and leading the way for the nation.
All right, Catherine. Oh, Mr. Chu, go ahead.
Mentioned sort of two quick things. So, we've been blessed in San Francisco and California with our progressive politics to move forward on things. And as the fifth largest economy in the world, there are certain things that we can move forward. But it's so important for this movement to be reinforced around the world. And so for those of you who are watching, please feel free to reach out to any of us and how we can partner with you in making that happen. A lot of this is about educating. So politicians don't like to talk about taxes. They're not very popular. People don't like to talk about tax penalties. I agree that people like to talk about tax incentives. The problem with tax incentives is they cost money, and money is scarce, particularly now in a post-coronavirus. And so a lot of this, if we're going to move forward on this, I would suggest sort of two things. One, we have to do much more public education in what textile waste is all about. I happened to go on your website for this event and did not realize that the typical American consumer throws away 82 pounds of clothing every year, which is insane. But on top of that, so many of these products are wasteful in ways that people just don't think about. So for example, the fact that to make one cotton t-shirt, you need 733 gallons of fresh water. That's bonkers. That's nuts. And yet people don't know that. And so using your voices, communicating to the world, the public, the press, that this is happening, and then partnering with policymakers. All of us are represented here on this video conference to say, I would suggest the following: rather than using taxpayer dollars to give incentives to those who produce chemical-free products, why don't we partner carrot and stick? So say if you are creating t-shirts that are wasting water, you pay a little bit of a penalty, and that penalty is used to pay for a fund that again creates tax incentives to those that are producing chemical-free products. So from the perspective of the public, it is tax neutral, but for the industry, there's an enormous pressure to not do the bad activity and start doing good. These are hard conversations, but we're gonna need to do this if we consider.
Yeah. Yeah.
Polluter
Totally.
pays.
That's right. Well, I am not a professional in the fashion industry, but I am someone that is reading, that it's looking here and there. Whatever it's on our website, sfsfwi.org, is you find the information there. And we consumers, or people who buy products, I like to say, we need to know more about what's going on. So we can make the very wise and conscious choices. So this is the work, and it is going to take everybody to change and shift the fashion industry into one that is sustainable, transparent, that they don't use our fabulous resources, right? Look at the earth. It's so generous to all of us. And water is already scarce in other parts of the world. So something very serious that we need to consider. Okay, so let's.
So
Yes.
Sandra, we do have some questions, but I just want to make sure that you've done what you wanted to do with the panel, and then they had questions about the Sustainable Development Goals. So I know that's our next segment. So just want to give them that info.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so let's move on to the next questions. So briefly, I would like to go through some of the questions to see, so we can cover all of the material that we prepared for today. So, what are the conventional fashion's most pressing and challenging environmental issues affecting us today? Catherine.
Sure. I would say, obviously, fashion uses an immense, or the production of clothing and textiles produces an immense amount of emissions. It uses a lot of materials and chemicals, and then past the environmental issues, obviously, like the human and social justice issues. So, always the most challenging is how do we kind of slow this production? And so there's not, I know the curves of like how much production over time, and there's more clothes are supposed to be produced. It's just going up immensely. So it's how do we maybe take the the harmful chemicals out of clothing? How do we prioritize, if this is the way it goes, natural fibers? Since I know there's concern about synthetic fibers in clothing. And I would say
So
to keep it.
So let me ask you, with all that conversation that you're talking about, if you could just summarize it in a couple of sentences,
Sure.
What is that you see the Sustainable Development Goals taking place in the practices that you have at the Cal Recycle?
Ooh, I believe there's one. Well, like use of resources, natural resource use, and that I mean, as a like Cal Recycle, that's kind of our aim. Even though we're trying to look beyond just what goes to landfill, which is usually our frame. But environmentally, I guess with the natural resources would be overuse of natural resources. One of the fashion's biggest environmental issue, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
And the waste hierarchy.
Yeah,
that's another thing.
How about you?
I was going to say the waste hierarchy is kind of used as a guideline for a lot of legislation and regulations, which puts reuse over recycling, over landfilling. And so if we can drive up the reuse segment, and I would say one of the most pressing issues is, as many companies are going to recycled content, where's your feedstock coming from, right? There's only so many water bottles that you can put into your t-shirt. You should own your own waste. Your product should be your feedstock. Yeah. So working with designers, working with recyclers, and working with waste collectors. Again, looking at where are these products going after they're consumed.
Yeah, thank you so much. What about you, Mr. Chu?
Well, I certainly would agree that the top challenges are around the lack of sustainable materials and thinking of how products can be used more longer, how can we encourage secondhand use, how do we think about upcycling. But I want to flip the question around just a little bit and suggest that I think conventional fashion has real opportunities to shift to sustainable manufacturing. in the, thinking about just literally the last couple of weeks with coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic has pushed the industry literally overnight to start producing PPE materials, masks, gowns, like literally shifting what they're producing in a matter of a couple of weeks. And from my perspective, the fact that the industry could pivot and change so quickly is an indication that if they were so inspired around sustainable materials, they could do the same. And we have to figure out that call to action. I would just suggest, I looked at the stat this morning, there have been 200,000 folks who have died in the last 6 months because of coronavirus. Now, let me think about that number, which is horrific and tragic and just mind-boggling. We can't wrap our brains around it. The World Health Organization has estimated that by the year 2030, 250,000 people additional will die every year because of climate change. And yet we're not responding in the world with the same speed as we're responding, all hands on deck to deal with coronavirus. I suspect that if we told the fashion industry tomorrow, we have to only start using sustainable materials, we have to think about how the industry, how to incent the industry to focus on materials, clothing that can last. They could do it. You could do it. You can do it. And yet it hasn't happened. So how do you create that sense of urgency to sort of?
Yes. Okay, so these conversations can go on and on and on because there's so much that we need to share and so much that we need to learn. But I'm going to thank you, each of you, Catherine Wilkins, Dr. Joanne Brash, and Assembly Member David Chu. It has been a pleasure being here with you. You can find them on our Express United page on our website and also on the list of the speakers at sfsfwi.org. And with that, I just conclude this panel. Thank you so much. Until next time. Athena?
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we are back, and with those sustainable development goals, learning about those, that's what we have up next. So go ahead and watch the video, and we will be right back.